Well, so good to have you in the studio.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sue.
Yeah,
Cheers.
thanks for
Thanks
coming
for being
in.
here.
Cheers, guys.
So one of the things that got my attention was I had a client who's been a friend of mine for a long time here, and she always came back with various pains in her leg, and I was able to help her to an extent. And then she went to see you, and she said, "Oh my goodness, she's a witch doctor." She just touched me in this particular way, and she knew things, and it really worked. And I was like, wow, I want to learn more about this lady and what your journey is. So if you take us back, what got you into contact care? And I don't even know if saying that is just limiting it too much by using that phrase, because who you are as a person is so many things, I'm sure.
Oh, right. Oh, well, I'll start with contact care. So I breed horses, and I bought a lot of mares. The best mares to use for breeding are really good mares who've been injured.
Of course.
Yeah,
They're cheaper because they're injured, right?
You've kind of hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
You can buy really good quality horses that and give them a second chance and actually give them a really nice life.
Right.
So anyway, a lady was looking at buying a horse off me, and she organised for a bloke called Dale Speedy to come to my farm and work with this particular horse, and that she was looking at buying, and he was just incredible. And that same week, I met a bloke who'd won $20 million in the lottery.
Wow.
And I looked at that guy, and I looked at what Dale could do, and I thought, if I had a choice between the two, I'd rather be Dale Speedy than the bloke with $20 million.
Yeah.
He really blew my mind. And anyway, so Dale came up with this idea that so there was when he came to the farm, quite a few people came to watch him in action because he's interesting. And there was a local lady who was learning to do contact care, and she wanted to work with horses, but she was quite scared of them. And so Dale said, Lee, you go to Sue's place and you work with her horses. She'll teach you about horses, and you'll work with her horses for a discounted rate. So that's a good idea. So she'd come once a week, and the first horse she worked with was this mare, and she might have spent 15 minutes on her, and it didn't seem long. And she stepped back, and this mare just went for this joyful hoon around the paddock. It was just kicking up her feet and bucking, and I just couldn't believe it, because I'd had her that mare for about 3 years, and she was really body broken, and I'd never seen her do more than a trot. And it would be like really stiff and unhappy. And I was just...
So there was an instant transformation before your eyes. What do you attribute that to? Like what can you paint a picture of like what does that look like? I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Because
we've got all the time in the world. Go for it.
Because that's fascinating when you see a living animal, a being that suddenly changes their energetic state, and there's life. There's this. Yeah. Yep. It's fascinating.
Right. Okay. Well, that horse, obviously, she'd had a pretty rugged life, and she came to me, as a lot of my mares do. She came to me and with just a lot of pain and baggage and a story.
Was it definitely going to be you or being put down?
Not that particular horse, but I did have several horses that I was the person
they
between them and a
situation.
hole. Yeah.
Right.
And anyway, so my answer, the simplest answer is that the horse had a collection of what we call flinch locks. Okay. So a flinch lock is a surprise impact that touches the bone. So it's basically the whack you didn't see coming. So say you're picking something out of your bottom drawer and you stand up and whack your head on the cupboard that's sticking out above
Yeah.
the door, and you
Yeah,
whack
yeah.
your head. That's a good example of a surprise.
I had one of those the
impact
other day,
created.
actually. But walked into the fridge door and nearly fell over. True story. Anyway.
Look at you
and
later.
it was painful. It was painful.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was so
yeah.
painful.
So is the key to a flinch lock injury always being surprise,
Yes,
as opposed to an
Right.
injury you see happening, see
absolutely.
coming,
If you see it coming, you're ready for it. Your body,
has some expectation,
yes,
even
it's
if
that-
it's not well received.
exactly. The body gets in its defensive mode.
Can I make a guess of where you're going with this? That the surprise locks something into the nervous system?
That's a good question. It's bone. We really
Right.
do focus on bone,
Yeah,
but there's a sensory element
sure.
to the bone. So we work
Is
with
that right? A
both.
sensory element to the bone? Because it's obviously a living. We don't talk much about bones.
We don't talk
in
about
terms
the
of the
innovation much of bones either.
Yeah.
Innovation meaning the nerves and through them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they store memory.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Like in a crystalline way.
Or a fascia way.
Fascia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because I've heard of that often. Yeah, that there's like an energetic imprint or traumatic imprint that can be stored in the fascia, which is
Yes.
obviously very connected to the
To
bone.
the bone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so surprise impacts. And so when you're working with a flinch lock, as soon as you touch it, you know, like it will lock you up. So it's like a frozen moment of time. And when you touch it, it freezes you up.
Does it reactivate the memory, or does it?
Yeah, well, if you release it correctly, definitely. So once you've found the flinch lock, your job is to replicate what happened.
Oh.
So you hold it. So you need to give it the direction and angle to escape. So you're basically holding pressure, and you need to give it somewhere to go. So you hold it in such a way that it's fully supported, and then you ground yourself deeply.
As
because
the therapist.
As a therapist, because you're basically lifting. Because you hold this immense weight. Often it's huge weight. And so another sign, you lock up, and usually when you are on a heavy flinch lock, your stance, you'll just widen your feet because you're about to, it's just something you do automatically. So we go to pick up a box and it's light. We're expecting it to be light, but it's heavier, so we just automatically widen our feet to lift it. So flinch locks do the same to your feet. So if it's a heavier one than you're expecting, you widen your stance, and then you simply pick it up and release it. So Dale, he doesn't really call it a body work. He says we're basically doing martial arts. So, and he's a 6th Dan martial artist.
In
So
which discipline, which martial art?
I should know, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
No.
That's all right. Yeah. I love the martial arts. I'm very
I
interested in them. Yeah.
think it's karate. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I ask, when that's happening, when you do that technique, or in that moment, that maybe I could call it that release?
Yeah.
Okay. Just whatever you could refine that one move down to. Well, say the release, unless you've got a better word for it. What is the client's experience and what is the therapist's experience? How do they differ from each other? What's going on for them and what's going on for you?
Oh, that's such a great question. My focus, whenever you're doing contact care, your most important focus is your client's comfort, because that's where you find their flinch locks. So we start off by saying, a session will start with, get into your most comfortable position, or when you're suffering pain from whatever the issue is, what do you do to ease it?
If we're talking about a horse here, how do you?
You've gone a long way from the horse.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought we were.
Let's go back to the horse.
Yeah. But I was thinking, how would you do that with the horse? to get in a comfortable position? Is that just
Oh,
something?
that's a good question. It's more observation and
and see how the horse reacts.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And then you go back to the horse's story, its movement, and just where you're drawn.
Okay.
Often their coats will show you where that horse rubs itself a lot, or where it's where
Right.
it lies on the ground. Because
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had horses just walk up to me and just put the place they want me to work on in my hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah,
okay.
that's
But
a really onto
they're
it
recognizing something about you. Let's come back to that. I still want to know. Just get away from the horses, Rob.
Hey.
Hey. Nay. But if you have someone who's in your clinic now, and I still want to know what's their experience and what's yours, but now you've made me think of another thing. Is there some truth in this philosophy, this discipline of healing, where it encourages you to put yourself in even the strangest position, if that's your position of comfort?
Definitely.
Can you tell me about that as well as those things?
So if somebody puts themselves into their position of comfort, then they will rest their heaviest bone.
Right.
So then, and that's where so it's the places that if they're, they can stand, sit, lie down, stand on their heads even. Seen a treatment with a bloke who did that, to relax his stand on his head. So
For him, that gave
that was
the weight of gravity did something that
exactly
removed
and
pain.
the flinch lock was on the top of his head.
No kidding.
So we lie. So when somebody, so it's those points of contact. So that's where you're going to start. So places. So say they're lying on a table, you'll go to the places that are. You can do a complicated search pattern, or I just go into where I think it is, and it's usually there. So so that's the answer to that question.
So describe a release from the two perspectives.
Right. So I'm going to find something that just pulls me. I feel the weight of it. It locks me up. So I do what we call the formula. So I'll hold it, get comfortable, make sure my client's comfortable, and then I will simply lift it.
And the formula is a series of protocols with this modality.
Yes,
That's all the standard things you sort of get under control.
You simply take the weight, feel the pressure, adjust to it, and then simply just to let it unravel under your hands. And then, but you always think 1, 2, 3. So you're releasing it, and as you count to 3 and make 3 movements, it will usually be quite dynamic. So a lot of injuries are, we're moving around as we get smacked or whatever, or fall over or whatever. So and then it simply releases. So the client, I think it's a lot of relief. It's like, oh yeah, this is the thing that's been holding me down, and it's comfort. Because I mentioned comfort, they should feel safe and protected because they're in a very vulnerable position at that point. So safe and protected, and that's where I have to have my balance. They just need to know they're secure.
Is the patient, or do you call them patients or client? Yeah, because patient's really related into the medical, into the medical field, right?
Stay well clear of that.
Yeah, that's right. Is the client, or the client's body, reluctant to go into those positions where you say, "Hey, we're re-entering something that has memory to it"?
That's a great question. If people are in a lot of pain, it's really easy to get there. Like those
like,
places.
I'm done with this.
Yeah, it's like
go for it.
Yeah, please. Yeah, and there's no reluctance whatsoever. Sometimes you do. Sometimes get clients where wouldn't necessarily go into their worst injury. So I'd start with tuning into my own body then.
And so then you're looking for extra sort of advice from your intuition.
Yeah, so often. So there's the thing that's a bit different about me. What you're really wanting me to talk about.
Well, no, but hold off from it because cover everything off as you know it is stock standard because that's just unique to you.
Right.
That other thing, right? That's
Okay.
something that you have as your kind of special magic superpower. But there are still people that Dale's taught to do contact care who may not perceive the world as you do, and they do a good job.
Absolutely.
I'm told.
Yeah.
I'm told because I hear from other people who go, it's really popular in the Hauraki Plains and it's really popular in this area. And I've got another friend who's a contact care person, and I know that everyone's got a different number of past lives maybe, but a different number of experiences to bring to
Yes.
and everyone's got a different setting on their dial of woo-woo when they do anything. So with contact care though, I imagine if you have had someone who's been attacked in a way that's really sensitive, maybe it's been an assault or something, then I suppose there might be someone who presents to you that's really locked up and doesn't want to open up to this because it represents so many layers of emotional.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I started out working with badly abused horses, like a lot of the horses. It's a saying, where knowledge ends, frustration begins.
Oh, what a good one.
Very applicable to horses,
Yeah.
where there'd been sometimes the injured horses mares I had, it wasn't totally obvious what was wrong with them, so they were certainly weren't performing, and so that brought, obviously brought out stuff. So I worked with some of the horses of my own horse I worked with had really horrible experiences. So, and of course, when I first started, I was just working on my own animals, and it was amazing because I could just put, we need to sort you out. So I'd put them in a pen, and basically they were there until I got them sorted, which made me learn a lot faster than everybody else I knew who was sort of, begging humans to let them work.
You literally had a give me those headphones, I'll adjust them for you.
Oh, sorry.
Let me fix them. But you would literally have had a backlog of animals that were waiting for work in a pen who were your next group of people to practice on. But people.
Well, it was kind of fun. Like, I remember one day I walked out. It was just when I first got into it, and it was just like my own little magical work. I wasn't telling anybody about it. I was just doing, and all the animals were just doing these extraordinary things, and I was just having these amazing things where it was like it's hard to believe what I'm seeing, and yet I know it's happening. But I remember one morning, I stepped out the door and every animal was, I suppose probably relevant right now that I own a farm park. So
I was going to say, right? Yeah.
Not every walkbody's got tons of animals around.
Let's cover that off. You've got Bullswool Farm Park. Is that the best? Yeah, and it's a really well-known tourist attraction in our part of the world.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So, I've got all sorts of animals.
That must have been such a magical time for you.
Oh, yeah.
When you were starting to, for that to develop, to arise and come into being.
Yeah, well, the first horse I ever worked on my own after doing a course, it was the best. I think I was the best I will ever be. So this horse was really interesting because she'd been a pig hunting pony, and she was that's the only word I could use to describe it was body broken. And she was so body broken.
She would have carried a lot of pigs after they'd been shot.
Yes.
They're heavy.
Heavy. And when I found working with her, nothing was well balanced. Well, the pigs a crupper was used. Now it's basically a strip of really strong leather that goes under the horse's tail and holds things in position. So we're talking incredibly heavy. So this tail is an extension of the horse's spine.
Yeah.
Right.
So these massive weights that are inherently unstable.
Yeah.
And then they're moving through really awkward, difficult bush tracks.
Yeah.
Right.
So that weight is constantly moving.
And this is pulled up against the underside of the...
Yeah, it's called the dock. So it's just that point the body meets the tail. That's where the crupper sits.
That can't be good.
Oh, no, poor thing. So she was the reason I started working with her was she'd had a foal. She'd arrived to it. We didn't know she was in foal, but she came to us and she'd had a foal. And my mum, who was living on a different part of the farm, had been working with the foal, and she brought this mare and foal down to my yards outside my house, and she said, I can't lift the foal's feet, and I'd like you to do this part of his training for me. And I looked at the foal, and I thought, if I work with that foal, I'm going to get my head kicked in.
Oh, really?
It was just, don't. And so I thought, well, did this course this weekend, I'm going to work on the mare, because whatever he's got going on, it started with her. So that's when I started with her, and it was incredible. It was just, I felt like I was doing Tai Chi. That's the only way I can describe it. And it's interesting because to improve our contact care work, we do Qigong. That's our foundation. That's
right.
like if a musician is practicing playing the guitar, doing scales. Qigong is like us doing scales.
Right.
So anyway, I would start working with this horse, and I just knew where to go and what to do with her, and just everywhere I went was this flinch lock after flinch lock.
Right.
But that's when I realised I could feel the stuff in my own body, because I'd feel something in my own body, and as I was looking at her, and then I'd go to that place, and there was a flinch lock.
So like there was a correspondence happening there?
Yeah, exactly. So just the corresponding part in her body that I was feeling. And then I'd release something, and then I'd just step back, and then just sort of go in, and sort of like time stood still. I've got no idea how long I worked with that horse. And
because there was such presence there.
Yeah.
And this thing about time, there's only presence and now. So
it's incredible. And I thought, just remember this sensation, because it was the true beginner's mind, because I was like, after this, I will be full with knowledge, and it will never be as pure and unfiltered as it is now. So anyway, so I worked, and I kind of think, this horse must have had enough by now. But she just sort of kept on wanting more from me. And ultimately, I was talking about the first day I worked with her, I got to the crupper, because she had all these. I've been around horses all my life, and I've never seen what this mare had going on. Which she had this, we call it roaning, where she had all these white flecks all over her body. So her legs just had white flecks all over, and the top of her tail had all these white flecks. And I'd actually thought she had a blaze, but after I'd finished working with her, all the white hairs. So I assumed that the white hairs were for where there was a lack of blood flow. And so after I worked with her, all these white hairs fell off, and she didn't have a blaze anymore.
What is a blaze?
Oh, sorry, that's a white stripe down a horse's, any markings on their front of their face.
It's called a blaze?
It's called a blaze, yeah.
Isn't that, for some people, they would like that.
Oh, yeah, look, it was quite nice.
It
fell away. It was just, I mean, she had quite a small blaze, but those white markings. And another thing, she always hid behind her mane, this particular horse. I hadn't seen her eyes when we first got her. And anyway, but I put my hand, I got to a point in the treatment where I put my hand on her, where the crupper sat, and I nearly threw up.
Oh, no.
It was just so much there. Yeah. And it was interesting because I barely even noticed her foal, but when I touched the crupper, he spun round, and I was holding it, he showed me his tail.
Right.
So I don't know if that was the part of the treatment that was the thing that made me, so cautious of him.
Do you think that you helped 2 generations of horse in that moment?
Definitely.
Because the trauma of it carried through to the child?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because we, the foal or a woman is held with her flinch locks. So if somebody brings a baby to me, I'll get mum to hold the baby, and I work with mum.
Right.
If somebody brings a small child to me, I will work with the small child for a really short length of time, and mum gets heaps and heaps of my attention. But I've had really interesting stuff with intergenerational stuff with horses because I've
Sure.
3 generations of the same line of horses, and just seeing that interconnectedness. And by the 3rd generation, can clear it. Yeah, because clear all that stuff.
I feel that's so important. We forget that there's intergenerational trauma that's handed down. So it's not just if we breaking that lineage, that pattern, whatever, is just so important, I believe. I think it's just something which, is a lot more. People know more about that now. It's become more sort of well known.
People say it's held in the DNA, but I wonder if it's just shared through the energy.
Yeah, well, I'd say it's, well, from my point of view, it's passed on through the bones. But it's interesting because I went from working with abused horses to working with abused people,
right?
And women, and I've worked with quite a lot. Yeah, it's been interesting working with that family line because I've worked with often. The way I started working with abused people was sort of in itself kind of interesting because I've got the farm park and there's people at my property all the time, and I started noticing. I've got a farmer's eye. Like you do notice how, you're just always observing movement and how animals are holding themselves and all that stuff. And then I just sort of started doing that with people. And every now and again, I'd see always a woman. I'd see a woman, and the way she was carrying herself caught my attention. And I would just see that they were, the closest I can say was they were like prey. There was like the horse, I was pony I was talking with, she was like out in the wild, she was a meal waiting for a lion.
Wow.
So, and women who've come from extreme abuse have that sort of it's described as a slightly hunched movement and a hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And I just started seeing it, and then once you see it, you've got to offer. So if it was appropriate and it felt right, I'd go up and I'd say, "Oh, excuse me, I know this sounds a bit weird. But I think you've got something I can help you with, and if I do this type of body work called contact care, and if you'd like me, if you've got 20 spare minutes," and every single woman I ever approached just said, "Oh God, yes, please."
Wow.
Amazing.
It's
good.
No,
Sorry, they say, bringing it back to the body language, the demeanor, you picking that up. Every body tells a story. So does a face. And so you must be picking up on that. And obviously the deeper, you're picking up on the deeper level to that. But you can recognize that. You can go, hang on a minute.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because I would just be drawn to them. And I can't say, I didn't know really what to expect. But, I'd always find, extreme violence. But then it brings up interesting questions because I would find that they were trapped in a fight or flight state. And so we can find that and release it. And then but then it's like what you attract. And that's an endlessly fascinating
So let
subject.
me ask that because that's you've had me thinking about that since you said that they look like prey. Is someone who has experienced something unfortunate in a relationship with someone and they've been abused, then locked into this hunched over appearance of being prey, and now someone else who feels that they can abuse them spots that
Absolutely.
and is attracted to be in that relationship, and then they leave from one bad situation to another because they haven't changed in themselves because it's unresolved and it's difficult to heal, and then they attract more people who opportunistically go, I can have power over that person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They've sort of got this victim.
And then they wonder why they're always attracting
mentality.
that kind of partner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those sorts of men are, humans are apex predators, but those sorts of men are the top of the apex.
It's
as predator men.
Yes, as predator men. So they can spot.
But it's not just male and female.
Oh, no.
And
Yeah,
not,
sorry.
And it's not always in that direction either.
Yeah.
You'll have men that are beaten up.
Yeah.
Sorry,
well.
that's
and
a
you'll
really
also
gross
have
generalisation.
you'll
on my
have
part.
gay couples that'll do the same.
Yeah.
In both sexes.
It's fascinating. Something came up for me. I remember seeing this study about pedophiles, right? And they were talking to the perpetrators. And they say, well, how do you actually like find your victim? And they said they didn't worry about the mother so much. They looked at the father and whether he was strong, right? So if you carry a strength to you, if you can fight and have this, you're not the opposite of being, a victim, they would often go for it's as you say, it's like apex predators. They go for the weakest. So
if the female had a strong relationship with her dad, a predator would leave them alone.
Yeah, well, basically, if it's a male perpetrator, they didn't worry about the female because they figured they were weaker anyway, but they were always looking at the dad as, a sign of strength, or if they weren't, then because as a protector.
Oh, the father is a protector.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Sorry, that was just a little side thing.
No, that's interesting, and I think
about
that would
this
also
whole
affect
victim sort of,
that would affect how a person holds themselves, how they feel the people around them are protective of them or not.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh wow! So, what is your point of difference that through your life perhaps has attracted you to this, or maybe? Well, it was clear that Dale impressed you, and that was attractive in itself to go, I'd like to be like that. But also, you must have something that makes you have an affinity to energies and things, and perhaps your, as we all have some clairvoyant faculty, perhaps yours is a little extra.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. What I believe, because people always ask me how I can do what I do. Yeah. And initially I couldn't tell them. I just couldn't.
You knew, but you couldn't tell them.
Yeah, well,
you didn't want to tell them.
It took me a while to figure it out, but I think I've figured it out a bit now. Yeah. I feel so I've always had really interesting intuitive experiences. I feel that I have a remnant of what hunter-gatherers used to be able to do, and my father has exactly the same thing. So, and for whatever reason, because that all got bludgeoned out of us.
To describe that, Hunter, what do you mean by that?
So I'll explain exactly what that means. So when I was growing up, I'd get the sense every now and again I had to go to a particular place on our farm. And even though I'd be walking there and I'd be thinking to myself, this makes no sense. There's no reason to go there. I've got other things I should be doing. This is weird. Anyway, and I'd get there and I'd always find an animal that was in distress. And interestingly, and then thinking about it later, the animals in question were always, like, they were trapped. Like, they were perfectly healthy, but trapped. Like, say, for instance, it was a sheep that was stuck.
Like physically trapped.
Yeah,
okay.
A sheep stuck in
some barbed wire.
Like blackberry bush
or
cast, where they've gone down and they can't get up again, but they're still, they might be just a bit fat or whatever. So it was always things where they were stuck. But anyway, one day I just got talking with my dad, and he said, he mentioned it. He has had the same experiences. Wow. And I'll be honest, because we were just like, it's interesting, isn't it? And then we life's black and white, and sometimes it's a bit grey, So we never really, it's just, and we actually thought genuinely that was because we were really lovely people and good farmers. And then just talking with Dale, the first beginning of the first course I ever went to, he was talking about humans being apex predators, and then it made sense what we could do. Because I thought all of the animals we found were good eating.
Oh wow. Wow. Oh, that's what a fascinating twist on events. Because you think, you're a good person, you help things in need. Actually, you've got a sense for trapped animals that are good to eat. But in this modern sense, you're actually going to pull them out and help them.
So that's coming back to the hunter being survival. Yeah. So in order to survive, you need to find what's...
Absolutely.
And the easier it is you don't need to kill it, it's trapped.
Yeah,
So it's
'cause
even
hard.
easier.
It's hard work.
If you're a
running
hunter,
around after,
and you
know.
don't know if you're even going to
So-
get any food that day, so that's tying it right back.
You don't think
Yeah.
of it as an animal that's calling out through the ether, going, "Help me, farmer."
It's a stress signal.
only-
Like don't sharks do that? They can pick
Only
up.
you can help me. Because they
No.
know that you're the boss of the farm.
It's going back to the apex predator.
Really?
Yeah. And see, it's the same with when I work with clients. See, I know where they're vulnerable. Again, they think I'm lovely, but I know where their vulnerable places are.
So if you were a narcissist
Oh,
and
I
had that
could-
skill,
I
you
could
could
be-
really mess people up.
I've never thought of it, but yeah.
Well, maybe this is why
absolutely.
some narcissists are sort of tinkering on the edge of good versus evil there.
Well, you
Because
do
it's a
hear
real
of-
skill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've worked with a few people who've had horrific injuries, and they've mentioned that the person who did it to them were working as therapists. So
Oh, you're kidding.
yeah,
Holy,
yeah.
wow.
Mm.
Okay. Fascinating.
Going on back to that thing, it's interesting because we're talking about vulnerability, and I think that's because we do know those people, and our heart goes out to them where they have, in that perpetuating cycles that just passes down from generation to generation. So something again, you learn a lot from observing animals, but when I first started doing contact care, I had this fancy pants imported stallion, and who had a few issues. And I'd done a lot of work on his left jaw, which had been injured. And one day I put him with a filly that hadn't been served before, and with the hopes that they would make beautiful love and have it make a foal. Anyway, this filly was having none of it, and she took one look at the stallion and she was gone, and he went after her, and she was like full on galloping. She's just not
Is that kind of normal?
It can be. Yeah.
That extreme.
I mean,
okay.
now I know a lot more. I'd have dealt with it all. I'd have managed it better. But anyway, so she did not want, and so she, in full gallop, she fired a kick backwards, and that kick landed with a crack, and it landed right on his left jaw.
Wow.
It was a left hook to the jaw.
Yeah.
But it was just that she knew, even though, I mean, it shows how precise horses can be, but she knew, even though she was in a flight
she
state,
knew
she
where
knew
to hit him.
exactly where to hit him.
Wow.
And I had a really interesting client one day where it's kind of along the same lines, and often clients I bring back, I tell them stories about horses to sort of try and help them understand their own situation.
Yeah.
But this lady brought in her son who was suffering from tinnitus, and he was 17 and he was huge. He was a young man mountain, and so he had tinnitus because he'd had a huge punch in the head. So I worked with that, and then I kept on finding all these other things where it's just been a repeated cycle with him, and he'd had all these head impacts, from other humans. And at one point, I started making this. Sounds really weird, but I started making this hissing sound. Like I wanted to hiss like a cat. And my fingers went into claws, and I went up to him, and I'm like, well, this is weird, but you just go with stuff, eh? Because if you start editing, if you don't go with it, you're editing yourself. So anyway, so I go up to him, and as I go up to his face, I could see all these tiny crescent, like all these little white shapes in the shape of crescents all over his face. And I said, what happened here? And he said, a girl lost it, and she started clawing my face.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what I'd imagine. As soon as you start seeing, I was thinking, there's some.
Wow.
So anyway, I'm like this, and so I turned to his mum, and I'm like, well, there's this repeating pattern. And so I said to Mum, is there something? I went to the birth story actually, and I was like, did you have an assisted labour with your son? And she said, yes. And I was like, right. So suddenly it all made sense. And so I worked with him just with his head, and as I held his head, I could feel where he'd been, because he was a big boy, and he'd been assisted out the birth path. and there'd been all these. So that's quite traumatic to a baby to be stuck and pulled out, and so it had damaged. It had all these stresses and damage bits, and a lot of pressure on his head. And so we released that. And what I think was that because he was big, that sort of brought out, an aggression in others, and trying to prove themselves. And they'd look up, they'd sort of look him up, and they couldn't take him on. And then when they saw his head, which was so injured and damaged, just like the mare who could kick, you knew where to kick the stallion's jaw. It was like, I can take him. And that was why that girl knew that she could claw that face and she'd get away with it.
Even though he's this big guy that should be able to defend himself.
Yeah.
So you're saying that other guys would notice that as well, not just the girlfriend?
Yeah, definitely. So that's that thing.
That's so fascinating.
That's that apex predator.
Yeah.
And we can all do that. We all sense that vulnerability place.
Yeah.
So,
I suppose that's true, right? I mean, if you're a boxer or you're a
I was
martial
just
arts,
going to
you're
bring
look
up.
for someone's...
I watch a lot of martial arts, mixed martial arts, and because it's mixed martial arts, there's striking, there's wrestling, there's grappling, etc., etc. And the matchup is always the interesting one is the wrestler versus the striker, because the striker is really good and the wrestler is good at wrestling. So you want to pick their vulnerability. So the wrestler, you do want to maintain distance and strike, and the wrestler wants to get a hold of you. So it's the same kind of thing, but you kind of know what their vulnerability. But picking that up as a apex predator, you're saying we all have this ability. I don't view the world through that lens necessarily.
Sort of
I'm not looking at people going,
"What's that?"
Yeah.
You go, and as in a sense, you realise we all do have that.
I guess we do. A survival instinct maybe.
But we never
kicks in.
need to use it.
We never need to use it. Yeah, but I guess someone who perhaps is perpetuating that abuse cycle and then wants to
So my question is, when
hurt people, then maybe they do.
When you see these little crescents in the face, which were claw marks, is it just you that's seeing that, or is anyone in the room seeing that?
Well, it was only me looking at him.
But do you think that's your clairvoyant ability to see something on a person's face that no one else can see?
Possibly.
Sure.
So when I'm...
Is it a mental picture in your head or like an image?
It's so sometimes it's really variable to the client and the situation and how I can connect with the client. Sometimes I start sensing things that are going on with them before they arrive, and I'll know what what I need to work with them.
So because you tune into them before they arrive, you think, oh, Bob's coming at 2:00, and then you think about Bob and you're sort of in that zone.
Kind of. Well, I didn't know I could do this, but I had a lady coming and she'd booked with me through Facebook, and I was thinking about it because I was thinking, oh, that lady's coming at 2:00, and she just seems really cool. I'm going to enjoy that session. And walking along, and next minute, my back's arched, and I'm going, and then I was like, well, that was weird. And so I go back to walking along, and then she popped into my head, and it just kept on happening whenever she popped into my head. So she arrived, and I was like, I know this seems weird, but does this mean anything to you? And then I arched my back and made the sound, and she said, I have sleep apnea, and that is exactly what I do when I can't breathe at night. That's the thing that gets me breathing again. So then I realised, I didn't know that I could do that. So then I started tuning in and just feeling what my body did when a client's coming, and sometimes it's spontaneous. Sometimes one client, I took the booking, and as I started writing up her name, this incredible scenario played out where she, had been in violent assault, and I ended up in the fetal position. So the tuning into clients. So that often comes to me, but it's always the injury shape, if that makes sense. It's the shape that they're in where it's like the biggest issue.
Right.
And
So are they like little keys, symbols? Like the body creates the shape, and that sort of unlocks what the major...
what I think is that just gets my subconscious working,
Right.
because I go, oh, that's interesting. But when I get a really strong connection with that person before they come, that, you know, it always ends up being a really fascinating, interesting client. And I mean, I get really people are really at the real edges of despair. You know, they might have been seeing people for decades, or they're just in so much pain. They're really asking if they still want to be around.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, you know, I think that, you know, that really extreme stuff. So those, and then maybe it's again like the sheep that's stuck in the blackberry. It's just that, you know, they find me because that's, you know, that connection, and I understand that.
Do you think it's a part of their greater being, their you know, that part of your spirit, soul that's sort of calling out, that's
Definitely.
kind of like the last resort? Like, I've tried everything else. That's it. This is...
Yeah, but this is where we flick from you have an ability as a predator to you have an ability more as an angel. So, you know, if they're calling out to you now, that's different from you seeking out a weak point, right? You're actually, you come from a perspective
although
of
they're
wanting
attracted
and an
at some
intention to
level.
help.
So it's kind of like, again, going back to Dale, he said when he finished his 6-star martial arts training, he was given this book, and it was basically how to kill people. And he was horrified. And he said, it felt very, very uncomfortable at the whole thing. And he said, I flipped the book, and as soon as I flipped it, it became a book of healing. So I guess I'm a little, like, I didn't know I had any of this, could do any of this stuff. Like, it was like suddenly discovering I could speak Chinese, you know, it just sort of came to me. But when the real, you know, the people who were so desperate and really needing help, that's when the you know, it really became, you know, that's when I hate to say it, but that's when I'm at my absolute best, because that stuff is so easy. And maybe those people just, poor things, they just need a lucky break, you know, because that's, you know, it's, So in terms of sensing, so there's that initial connecting in, and then so often when I'm working with people, I feel stuff in my own body, like I was talking about with the horse, and so that's where I go. And then it's my eye. So I'll notice just something, maybe the way they're standing, or position of it, just something will draw me, you know, a spot. But that's like
this skill that you're talking about here, is this achievable through the classical training of body therapy, because they train people to notice a person's gait, how they stand, how they're balanced, movement?
Yeah, I mean, everyone is different, and I think that's the wonderful thing about contact care. Everyone brings something very different, and nothing is, and it just, you know, and there's people.
So what you described there wasn't something that was in your course that you did with Dale, because he didn't do a huge section on note the way people move or stand necessarily.
No.
I only ask that because I've seen that in other treatment courses. With the experiences that I've had, I've seen that formalized into a training course where, you know, you'll do movement and have a movement class or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're taught to, I think observation is a huge part of it. But I guess, you know, that's something that, again, something I have in common with Dale, like when he was a kid, he could look at a paddock of sheep and spot the one that, you know, needed it, you know, had sore feet, and I've always been able to do that too. So it's this time.
The way I look at it, you've got your own unique. We all have our own unique thumbprint. So this is your own unique way of doing what you do, and you're tuning into your own inner wisdom, intuition, all those levels, all those things which are so hard to put into words.
Yeah, absolutely.
And describe.
And there's contact care people who are much better at helping different, you know, there's things like if you've got tennis elbow, don't come to me. You know, like really minor stuff. I'm rubbish. These practitioners are much better helping out.
There's extremes, right? There's polarities. You go to the full polarity, as you say, when the most, like they're at their wits' end. Like you say, they want to exit this body. They've had it. They've done with this suffering.
Well, there's horses for courses.
What do you do?
Well, there isn't. Sorry, but there's horses for courses. There's therapists for certain things.
Yeah.
Which is lovely, you know. Key to every lock, pot for every lid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to...
A therapist for every tennis elbow?
True. One thing I was going to say is that when you feel those sensations in your body, what sort of toll does that have on you? Does that drain your energy? Like, do you have a recovery process? Because is that demanding, or does it instantly release?
It's interesting because sometimes, especially with extreme stuff, women, I'll always be asked, this isn't hurting you, because I react.
Sure.
Sometimes I'll touch stuff and I'll start crying. That's extreme, but and the way I explain it is I see myself as like a white projection screen, and so when I work with somebody, I feel all of their stuff, every bit of it, but it's like a movie that's playing on that screen. So when we watch a movie, we react. But when the projector turns off, and so I'm like, this isn't my stuff.
So you're not carrying that, you're not holding on to it, you're not attached to it.
Absolutely not.
Great.
And it's like, this is your story, and, when we're done, I'm that white screen again.
It just goes back to...
because I couldn't do it otherwise.
I know, I was going to say, that would be so taxing. Because I do know people that carry and hold, and then they have to process all that energy, and then they have like days off, and that's a heavy burden.
That's a shitty way to be a therapist.
No.
Yeah, to have to carry the problems of your
Tell them
clients.
about the white projection screen.
That's a great analogy. That's a great
just tune
analogy.
into this episode, right? Just watch this.
You're not the one projecting the pain and suffering. You're merely just viewing it.
I'm a conduit.
You're a conduit,
Yeah,
Nice.
That's how I see myself. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how you see yourself and your view on what is real? What is this reality we're in? Your greatest spiritual beliefs, maybe.
Is it a simulation? Is it a lucid dream?
Japhas, God, I should really dig deep
maybe
and come up with something profound.
This is my favorite.
Honestly,
this is your favorite. What is consciousness and the human reality? We have the five senses, obviously. We have sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. That's how we construct our reality. I believe there's no external reality, because without consciousness there is no reality. So, and the body is just a vessel. But in the greater scheme of things, what is this reality? Yeah.
I'm going to come up with the most simplistic answer,
Sure.
because when I get overwhelmed by stuff, I just go back to simple. Yeah. And I just think we're here to be useful, and we're here to learn.
Do you tie that into any belief system that's close enough? Like, this sort of fits with what the Buddhists think, or this sort of fits with XYZ.
I'm closest to a pantheist, which is worshipping nature.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That's...
I'd never heard that term. But there you go.
Yeah, like all hunter-gatherers are ultimately pantheists. But that's where, I spend a lot of time in nature. But that's where, I just think that's where all the knowledge and wisdom and, there's so much, lifetimes of learning in nature.
Have you encountered people who have heard of your reputation and were resistant to see you because they were a particularly strong Christian or something, and they were like, oh no, this lady's too clairvoyant, that's supposed to be evil, I can't deal with that? How did that turn out?
Oh, that's kind of, no, it's more somebody recommends me to, I've got a client who comes to me quite often. He's was a quite high-level rugby player, so we've sort of, he's had a few surprise impacts.
Sure.
And he was passing through Pairo, and he stops somewhere and said, oh, you drive, see you coming through Pairo quite often. Why do you come here? And he goes, oh, I go to Sue at Bullswell. And the bloke goes, oh, yes, that lady does something, doesn't she? And he goes,
she sure does.
And and so my client said, oh, yes, she's if she stands beside you, she can feel what's going on in your body. So my client thought that was fabulous.
Yeah.
And the guy he was talking to went, oh, gross. But my client was trying to convince him because he was like, oh, you're quite sore. You should go see her. And this guy was just like, no way was he want. Yeah, it just was just too
far out.
Their ideology and their programming is getting in the way of it.
Fine. Well,
Yeah.
and it's I can only do good work if somebody's comfortable. So
You can lead a horse to water, right? But you can't make it drink. Another horse joke.
How many more you got?
I don't know. I'll see how they go.
trotting on.
And also, stop it, please.
Good one.
But it's the whole thing when someone's ready. When someone's ready and open, then you can be receptive. And if you're closed, like anything, then you're not going to be open to what you do or anything in life.
And I just like...
And openness is obviously vulnerability again. It's that whole thing about being all in life. You let in being like so many people, particularly people that have obviously gone through abuse, they want to protect themselves. They want to close off. They put on an armor. But in order to be receptive to life, you've got to be open to everything, the good and the bad. That's the way I see it.
Well,
you can't separate. Like if you want to be open to love, everything.
Well, to your point, actually,
you have to have what, an open heart, right?
Yeah, and to your point, in order to be vulnerable, you've got to be really strong. Because if we have the ability to be predators and see other people's weaknesses or vulnerabilities, the person who shows no fear of being vulnerable is exhibiting great strength.
Well, vulnerability,
they're not afraid of being open.
Opens you up to the full spectrum of emotions. And what are we? We're emotional beings.
And I think a lot of people are so afraid to be vulnerable because, it's
of course
vulnerable.
It's scary. And we're not taught that, I believe, that it's okay. It's I always say every emotion is valid. We want to pick and choose. We always want to feel good, we want to feel positive, but it's the other stuff as well. Yeah, the dualistic nature of stuff. So,
absolutely.
So sensitive as you are to people, do you find yourself doing something like that with buildings? Walking into a space and sensing a prior trauma or a presence or an entity?
I'm pretty sensitive to buildings.
Yeah.
I actually work on that too. Like, I'm always trying to, charge up the woo.
Oh, yeah.
Fine tune or
So it's really, it's a really good, anyone who wants to be more intuitive, or if we want to use that word, like stepping into a building and just feeling its
what
vibes.
Do you sense?
How does it make you feel? What does, so.
But then does that then bring with it the issue of, well, what might you pick up and what cleansing habits have you got to clear yourself of things if you do pick up on it?
Well, I always have a nice cup of tea.
Well, that's not so hard.
Session, but then to do that. Yeah. But some clients bought me. Oh, they were so sweet. They bought me a rock, and our farm is covered in quartz rocks. So it's quite funny to bring me a rock. But anyway, they'd found this rock, and they were like, both these ladies are very into rocks, and they were like, we just saw this rock, and we thought of you. And it was a really big quartz rock, and it had been shaped by the river. So it was sort of quite rounded like a river stone.
Smooth.
And I was like, this is just the best gift. Thank you so much. So that sits outside my clinic.
Yeah.
And if something really, something a bit has come, then I put my hands on that rock. And
I must share with you our own rock story.
I was going to say, Stevie's
I did notice the Maritoto stone there.
It might be. I don't actually know if it is Maritoto or not. I know it's from nearby, but we get these from Eco Farm.
Oh, yeah.
Eco Farm Aotearoa. And they're called guardian rocks because they're a special type of andesite that are particularly good with cleansing EMF fields, because everything's got an EMF field. The fact that you're in the presence of an EMF field may not be neither good nor bad, but it's just that they can project a frequency, so you can clean them with these.
Are they part of the Guardian of the Galaxy rocks?
I would say they must be, because they're in this galaxy and they're Guardian rocks. And they're really good, great name, but they're an andesite rock found locally. Yeah. So that's what that is. But
cool.
everyone has a
Love
different.
a good Love a good rock.
Love a good rock story.
Well, this comes back to your connection to nature and all things elemental, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
And nature's the remedy. Nature's the answer. And I know I feel totally better when I've gone for a walk, hike in nature, or gone close to the ocean.
Yeah. Speaking of remedy and nature, if people want to reach out to you and visit your tourist attraction at Bullswell Farm, or find you for the work that you do, if what they've watched today resonates with them, what's the best way to get in touch for either?
If you Google Bullswell Farm, then you'll find me on you'll find me. But my contact care website is flinchlock.release.co.nz.
flinchlock.release.co.nz. Is there any interesting spelling to flinchlock?
No.
FLINCHLOCK.
Just how you'd think it would spell, yes.
And with contact care, why is it I always see it displayed as contact, C-A-R-E, where there's a dot between each letter, C-A-R-E in capital?
So this is Dale's dyslexic, which gives them quite a unique
Perspective.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And it stands for Common Approach to Real Ease. C-A-R-E. Yeah.
Common Approach to Real Ease.
Yeah. And the T, so it's con, and he puts a capital T in the tact, because it's tactile.
Yes.
We're tactful.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thanks so much for joining us today. And
it's been a pleasure.
You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much,
pleasure.
Sue. It's been so enlightening. Fascinating.
Wow.